What's goody, ladies and gentlemen? It's your man, MMA Kute, here with my predictions for UFC 314, Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. Before I get into this, I'd like to thank everyone who's currently watching this for clicking on the video. This is my first post. I'm a little bit nervous, but just thought, hey, why not? Let me just chuck this into the world and see what it brings me. So if you'd like me to continue with these prediction videos or just want to show a little support, I'd appreciate it heaps if you liked, shared, or subscribed to the channel. I'll be posting videos monthly with the most valid takes in MMA, ready to win you any multi you throw on a numbered card. Let's get to it. Starting off with the first fight to open up the main card, Nikita Krylov versus Dominic Reyes. To be honest, I don't really care too much for the outcome of this fight. I just see it as two washed light heavyweights going at it, just for the winner to be fed to either Alexander Rakic or Jan Blachowicz once either of those fights do become available. A question that does surround this man every single time he does step into the octagon is this Dominic Reyes' resurgence? I hope so, and want him to pick up the win next Sunday, because to be honest, the fall from grace after his title shot with John Jones should be studied. It should be studied in main school, not just MMA school. It's a big fall off. Reyes had went from debatably beating John Jones to getting knocked out in his next three fights. He did manage to get back into the win column with dubs against Dustin Jacoby and Lionheart Anthony Smith, but to be honest, they were both fights where he was expected to win comfortably. Nikita Krylov has been inactive, missing all of 2024 recovering from a shoulder injury, and hasn't fought since the summer of 2023. Before this point, he was on a really good win streak, so all he needs to do is show shades, glimpses of that fighter he was, and I'd be pretty confident in his ability to take out Reyes. In Nikita's most recent fight, he made light work of Ryan Spann, who is a shared opponent between the two. Spann was able to knock out Reyes in, I think it was a minute, so I think that says all that needs to be said. I do believe that Reyes is the better technical striker than Krylov, but also think that Krylov is just better at mixing things up in the cage. Reyes has taken a lot of damage. The chin isn't exactly the strongest, and he's a much worse grappler than Nikita Krylov. After this long layoff, I think that Nikita will come in with a grapple-heavy game plan and will keep the pressure on Reyes. If Reyes can't catch him, which I don't think he will, he's going to be outpointed to a decision. My pick for this fight is Nikita Krylov, 29-28 split decision, which will officially mark the end of Dominic Reyes' career in the UFC. The next fight that we have is Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull. I think the outcome of this fight depends on Patricio's conditioning. If he's coming into this fight strong, then I can see him out-grappling Yair in what fans will believe to be a boring fight later, coming in with a heavy control time-based game plan, because he simply just can't risk being on the feet with Yair. Pitbull cannot stand with him at all. Yair's kicks are ruthless, and he can strike from all angles. The best analogy that I can think of is Pitbull trying to remove a beehive from a tree without having any protective gear on. Without a doubt, he's going to get stung. Yair's too fast, too mobile. He's the much younger fighter and has enough power to hurt him. I think Yair can make easy work of the Bellator legend and finish him within 3 rounds. Pitbull is a great fighter and maybe could have had more success in the UFC had he come here earlier, but he's out of his prime and Yair is just entering his. This next fight, in my opinion, is the one that I'm most excited for. We've got Thug Nasty, Bryce Mitchell, against one of the most promising stars in the UFC, a member of the Fighting Nerds, Jean Silva, in a fight which I believe is closer than a lot of people are giving credit for. Bryce Mitchell has been caught up in a lot of controversy regarding his comments about an Austrian painter and got flamed for it by Rampage on the Jackson podcast. So there is a lot of noise that's currently surrounding him. People think he's got a screw loose in his head and have reasons to dislike him as a person too. And I don't condone the things he said, but this is MMA. And for me, regardless of the noise, Nothing really matters apart from what skills each fighter brings to the octagon comes fight day. Bryce Mitchell's being counted out. I think he has the skills to make this a pretty entertaining fight. Now that Ilia Topuria is gone, Bryce is a top 3 grappler in the featherweight division beside Movsar Oydoyer and Aljamain Sterling. John Silver has shown good takedown defense in his previous fights with Charles Jourdain and Drew Dober, but he hasn't been tested by a grappler of the same caliber as Bryce Mitchell. If Jean can hang with Bryce on the ground, I believe he's a future champion and a certified top 3 fighter in the division. Jean Silver's an interesting fighter, but there's just something that isn't right about this guy. He does remind me a little bit of me, except I don't have the confidence to act this way for the whole world to see. Whoever is able to impose their will until the other heel will end up victorious. If Mitchell can't keep Silver on the ground, this will be a bloodbath. And if he is, then he could very easily grapple his way to the win. I believe the hype surrounding the fighting nerds, and through the eye test, Silver has looked to have good enough takedown defense to keep Bryce from holding him down. He's extremely active in the clinch, constantly kneeing and elbowing his opponents, and looks like he's always having fun in there. I think Silver wants to punish Bryce, and will be able to do so over 3 rounds, taking home the unanimous decision win back to the fighting nerds. I'm Michael Chandler. Easy money. Paddy Pimblett has this really bad habit of leaving his chin up in the air whenever circling away from his opponents. And for a guy who swings as aggressively as Michael Chandler, he's going to see that and think barbecue chicken. I can't lie, when it comes to Paddy Pimblett, I've been a doubter. I thought Bobby was going to piece him up. Ferguson was washed when he beat him. And also, I don't really care what other people or the judges' scorecards have to say, but I can't be convinced that he won that fight against Jared Gordon. When it comes to the UFC, there are levels, and I don't think Paddy's on that level. Chandler, although he hasn't had the greatest record in the UFC, has only had fights with the big dogs. He debuted against and finished Dan Hooker. I think Hooker gives Paddy a run for his money. It's a better fight for him, a closer fight for him. Maybe if Paddy had been given, let's say, Beneil Dariush or Renato Moicano as a step up, then I'd have more faith in his ability. But I just don't think he can or is ready to hang with the big dogs yet. To put this into perspective, if Paddy does win here, he's a top 10 ranked lightweight and is probably a number 1 contenders fight away from a title shot. He does not do well against anybody in that top 5 and is probably finished by all of them within 4 rounds. If Paddy can prove me wrong here, I won't switch up. He's a fun character and a good person too, but to my standard, not champion material in the UFC. In his most recent outing against Charles Oliveira, Chandler got cooked. He didn't really have much to offer the former lightweight champion of the world, but I gotta give him respect where it's due. Dude Bronx had 13 minutes, almost 3 full rounds of control time against Michael Chandler and wasn't able to submit him. Chandler's as tough as nails. Gotta absolutely give him to him, but did enough to keep the man with the most submissions in UFC history from tapping him. However, at the same time, he did get tapped out by Dustin Poirier, who hasn't proven to be the most threatening person on the ground. So, if you do the maths, the MMA maths, it gives Paddy a chance here, but I do doubt he has the dog in him to hang with Chandler. My pick for this fight is a Michael Chandler 3rd round TKO. I do think that Paddy can avoid him for the first few rounds and potentially also be up on the scorecards too. But I also think he will make a mistake after gassing a little bit, a mistake that Michael Chandler will be able to capitalize on. This fight right here, the main event of UFC 314, Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. What are my thoughts? Alexander Volkanovski will win his title back. I do believe that Lopes is a very dangerous fight for Volk, especially considering that he is coming off of 2 knockout losses to, most recently, Mr. Aura himself, El Matador, the legend, Ilia Topuria, and the current number 1 pound-for-pound MMA fighter in the world, Islam Makhachev. After this long 1.5 year layoff, from the octagon, there is a big question on how Volk's chin will hold out. Has the time he's taken off been enough to recover fully? Because Diego's got some insane power for a 145 pounder. After rewatching Lopes' fight since coming into the UFC, I can agree with most fans in saying that he is an exciting fighter. The ceiling for this kid is high, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does see UFC gold at a later point in his career. Diego's always pushing forward, trying to take off his opponent's head with explosive barrages or punches, ultimately wanting to force them to the ground, which in the octagon is his bread and butter. But we've seen this before. Volk has already shared the octagon with guys like Brian Ortega, one of the most elite grapplers in the UFC, with a submission game that brought him to pause, genuine inches and seconds away from winning the featherweight title. Watching it live, I honestly thought that Volk was done for. He got caught up in one of the tightest guillotine chokes that I've ever witnessed, somehow escaped, then got hit with a nasty triangle straight after that. That was also fully locked in. Managed to escape that too. Had Volk not been the dog that he is, his title reign would have came to an end ages ago. But he is too much of a dog, and in my opinion has enough experience to avoid trouble against Diego Lopes. If Lopes can't knock out Volk, or even hurt him in the first 2 rounds, I believe Alexander Volkanovski will drown him. Lopes seems to fade after the 3rd round, and that just isn't good enough. That just ain't good enough for my featherweight GOAT, Alexander Volkanovski. You can make the excuse that the switch up in weight classes for the Dan Ige fight did tax at Diego's gas tank a little bit, but you also can't ignore that he did noticeably fade in that 3rd round, which he lost to a guy on 4 hours notice. Against Movsar Evloev, Lopes put up a great fight too, but that's also a fight that he lost. And although MMA math usually never works, it does kind of make sense to me that if you can escape those 2 chokes against Brian Ortega and also survive 7.5 minutes on the ground against Islam Makhachev without being submitted, that there's not a lot of other people out there who have the chance or ability to tap you out. Lopes' only chance at winning this fight, the vacant title, is to put this guy to sleep. I know that, you know that. Alexander Volkanovski also probably knows that and will be too smart to fall for it. My prediction for this fight is an Alexander Volkanovski decision, becoming the first man in the lighter weight classes to win the title past the age of 35. Through his experience, he will be cautious of Lopes' power, is going to avoid the right hand, and outpoint him with his striking for a majority of the 5 rounds. When Lopes does close the distance, I can visualize Volk clinching up and just bullying him with that big man strength, being defensively sound enough to not be submitted on the ground and lighting him up on the feet after Diego starts to slow down. These are, to be honest, yeah, that's pretty much done. Those are my predictions for UFC 314, Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. Thank you for sticking till the end of the video. Please like, please comment, share this, subscribe, do everything to support your boy, and I'll see you next time. Yeah.